What are you afraid of? I think if we're honest, we've all had someone or something that we were afraid of. To pull apart this subject, I'd like to use the relationship between Frieza and Vegeta. Well, for those that are unfamiliar with the backstory, Frieza took Vegeta from his father when he was like 11, 12 years old. He raised him to be a weapon of war, to take over planets, to do his bidding in a lot of different ways. And he threatened to kill his father if he didn't do what he told him to do. Now, what's tragic about that is that Vegeta's dad had been dead from the second day that he was in Frieza's possession. So he was fighting for a father that was already gone. The interesting thing about it, though, is that when we were traumatized or we have certain things taken from us, a lot of us develop coping mechanisms. Sometimes those coping mechanisms are positive, like exercise. You know, every time you're stressed, you go to the gym. Or if you're down in the dumps, you go to the gym. And that could be positive and work out pretty well for you. But the flip side of that is that if you find yourself developing negative habits every time that you're stressed out, where you're using drugs and alcohol or gambling or, sexual activity every single time you're stressed or down, those things can become self-destructive. And oftentimes, even after the moment of trauma and stress has passed, that habit remains. And the same happened with Vegeta. Vegeta was a prideful man, and Vegeta was prideful throughout the entire show, so much so that it impacted his ability to have a functional relationship with his son. It impacted his marriage. It impacted his ability to embrace things like friendship. He was uncomfortable in those spaces, and it showed. Another thing that happens is what I like to call the hostile clone. Hostile clone has two components to it. You have the internal hostile clone and the external hostile clone. The internal hostile clone, you can see very clearly in how a person operates. With Vegeta, up until the death of Frieza, you saw in many ways he mirrored the behaviors of Frieza. Frieza destroyed planets. Vegeta destroyed planets. Frieza discarded those that worked for him the second they weren't useful. Vegeta did the same thing. Frieza tortured planets of innocent people for his own selfish goals. Vegeta did the same thing. You become the very thing that you hate. In real life, I see it happen all the time. You see relationships where somebody was cheated on or abused, and they turn around and they become unfaithful to the next person or abusive to another person. Sometimes it's the children that sees a parent abusing the other parent, and they may even hate the parent that did it, but they do the same thing as they grow up. You see people that have been jumped or attacked brutally develop a more brutal side of themselves and willing to tap into some dark places that they didn't know was there. It's sad and tragic when we become a hostile clone. The external hostile clone is when a person sees the face of the person that traumatized them in everyone else. Whenever something is close to the experience when they were traumatized or hurt before, they find themselves acting out as if they're dealing with the person that hurt them. Overly dramatic responses, ruthless and aggressive responses to people that had nothing to do with your traumatic event. It just reminded you of it. Specifically with Vegeta, Goku. He saved Vegeta's life countless times. He actually killed Frieza at the behest of Vegeta. Vegeta, in tears, with his dying breath, asked Goku to kill him, not only for himself, but for their people. And Goku did it. And prideful Vegeta held it against him. They went through the Cell games, and Goku died, saving the planet, including Vegeta, from an exploding cell. What did Vegeta do the next time he had a chance? He tried to get into this aggressive, ridiculous fight. Well, who deserved that type of grudge? Frieza deserved that type of grudge. Frieza deserved you to hold on to this thing and be as ruthless as you felt like you needed to be, but not the man that saved your life multiple times. But it could be that when he looked at the face of Goku and most of his enemies, he saw Frieza, tapping into this anger and this pride and this trauma that forced him to be the man that we knew, that forced him to make countless mistakes as an adult. One of my favorite scriptures is, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power, of love, and a sound mind. The contrast is my favorite part of the scripture, because you have fear on one side, and you have power, and you have love, and you have a sound mind. I believe the power is the power and the strength to not allow the same things that happened in the past to happen again. And even if they do, to not allow them to affect you the same way. Because through God, you gain strength. Of love, the ability to forgive those that hurt you, and a sound mind. And a sound mind allows you to be able to see what is going on in front of you without it being tainted by the trauma of the past. Sometimes fear is false evidence appearing real, and sometimes the evidence of that fear is very real. The biggest tragedy that came from the relationship between Frieza and Vegeta is the fact that Vegeta's actions were dictated by Frieza even well after his death. Something may have happened to you that caused you to change how you behave, and at the root of that, you may even see the fear, but you don't have to allow this thing to dictate how you behave. You don't have to allow this thing to limit the experiences that you can have in life. And you don't have to allow this to make you a hostile clone.
Trunks, Bulma, I do this for you. And yes, even for you, Kakarot.